This is a production of KMmedia.pro. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. Our goal is simple: to explore evolving ideas one conversation at a time. So come on over into our world. I know you'll like it, because on today's show... And welcome everybody to a Wednesday afternoon. I hope everybody's doing well. It's a beautiful day in Seattle, and Eric conjured up a 90-degree day almost. Eric, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing fine, Kevin. Yeah, and it looks like it is 90 degrees as I look at the temperature right now. So hopefully everybody's out there staying cool and staying dialed to the radio or the internet or however you listen to the show.
What I'd like you to do is to stay in your car with your air conditioning on and listen to this show, because we've got a very, very good show for you today. And I'd like to thank Eric for 90. What's the rest of the week look like? Is it going to be this hot?
Yeah, it is going to be hot the next several days. In fact, looks like 90 tomorrow, 86 Friday, Saturday, 82, Sunday, 82. So, definitely warm weather, and you should definitely not spend too much time outside if you're sensitive to the heat. But luckily, it's not going to be too insane, not like some places in this country where it's going to be like in the 110s, that sort of thing. So.
Well, and sometimes, because we're on the radio, I want to do a public service announcement. We did this for the 4th of July. Go to the shows and don't blow fireworks at home. And here's another one for you. Here's a good one. Leave your pets at home. Don't leave them in the car while you're going shopping or hanging out. And don't forget, I can't believe this happens, but it does. Don't forget, if you've got a child in the back seat, that you've got a child in the back seat, because it doesn't take very long at all for it to go from 90 to 120 to 130 in the car. So it's really, really, really important. How about that?
Yeah, dogs die in hot cars, unfortunately, and it's that's a sad thing that nobody wants to have happen in their lives. So I think you're right. Leave them
And
at home.
leave them at home. And the other thing is, if somebody breaks into your car to let the dog get the air that they need, they're not going to get charged. So you're going to end up paying for a broken window to boot. So
That's expensive.
indeed it is. Indeed it is. We got a great show for you, Eric. And today we're going to blend science and technology together to figure out a better way to perhaps work on our mental health. Because I didn't really realize this, but there are a huge amount of our population has got mental health issues, and there aren't enough therapists. There's not enough work being done, and it's expensive. And for a lot of reasons, a lot of people are not getting the help they need. I know that for a fact, because when I was driving my bus for 12 years, there were lots of folks who should have been getting help who weren't.
Right.
And so today we've got a great gal, and I'm gonna. You wrote it down phonetically. I'm gonna try and say it, and we'll see how well I do. Marie Lesaicherre is less
It's
no. Go ahead.
Lesaicherre.
Lesaicherre is with us.
Yes.
She's a PhD and MBA, and she's got her own company called Acacia Health. And she works with people on their mental side. She's got some really unique programs that we're going to talk about. So I hope, and some of them you can do in the privacy of your own home. So why don't we go ahead and bring her on, and we can talk to her. And first of all, Marie, I have to tell you, I read your bio. I am so sorry. You've had quite the experience with life and death and relatives and all of that, and you're sitting there smiling, so you've come through it all. And thank you for who you are and for what you do. But for a long time, it was a very, very big deal in your life, wasn't it?
It was. I'm on the other side right now. So this. I hope this would be a message of hope for everybody who is listening, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Um, I grew up in France, as you may hear from the accent, in a family who suffered a lot of trauma, and I didn't know for many years that we had more than our share. a lot of death. My mother died when I was a baby, and then my brother, the grandparents, uncles, cousins. It was quite a lot, and then there were suicides as well. And so, yeah, it's a family who experienced quite a lot. Yeah.
And what I often say on the show, Marie, is that our life experiences sometimes become a blueprint for who we are and how we can get through those things, and they give us the experience and the ability to be able to get through those things and to come out the other side, which you clearly have. And now you've dedicated your life to helping people who have mental issues and have had a lot of trauma in their life and stuff. Tell us about your work that you're doing now.
So I do a few things. The biggest thing is really Lesaicherre, the mental health startup I created 18 months ago that offers an app that helps people transform stress, trauma, anxiety, fears into resilience, the ability to face life setback. So this is really the main part of my work, but I want to share a little bit more about mental health as well, share my journey, to be an inspiration. I coach a little bit on the side. I a tiny little bit. I mentor entrepreneurs as well. But the bulk of the work is on empowering people to deal with mental health issues.
Well, and you also were an entrepreneur. You spent 18 years launching and growing businesses for GE and startups in the US, Asia, Europe. Boy, you get around. How,
Yeah,
how
I
many
got
frequent flyer
around.
miles?
I'm very curious, and it's interesting because my father was not traveling. We never traveled as a child, but I don't know where I got the gene exactly. I grew up in Brittany, France, and people say that there are a lot of sailors in Brittany. A lot of them actually immigrated, a long time ago to Quebec. And I think I got that gene of being an explorer. And so I wanted to discover the world. I think I was an explorer of the world and of myself and the mind. I'm extremely curious. So I wanted to see.
I'd love to see your frequent miles card. I bet you've got a lot of frequent miles.
Yeah. And I, at some point, actually, interestingly, when I traveled in Africa, I decided not to fly anymore. I decided to go by bus and to slow down the journey. Yeah.
You went through Africa on a bus?
Yes, I decided it's a little side story. I read this book in Africa about a fortune teller who couldn't fly, and I found the story very interesting. And I think it was the rebound of flying so much during the MBA and when I was at GE. And so I decided to go by land actually. So I arrived in Senegal and I went south, the coast. And at some point I cheated. I flew across. But yeah, I went by land, which is extremely slow in Africa because the roads are in a pretty bad condition.
It's yeah, it's not like a four-lane super highway or the Autobahn or something like that. It's has ruts in it, and I bet you the buses can go 20, 30, 45 miles an hour tops.
Correct. And then you have big potholes, and then, because the roads are so bad, the buses get damaged, and then they stop and they have to repair. So you just wait.
When you going through Africa, we all hear stories about different places in the world and how dangerous they can be and so forth. Did you worry about your safety going through some of the parts of Africa?
When I was there, I did not worry, but in hindsight, I see where I put myself. Because I was still, I think, if we go deep into the trauma, when you lose so many people, I think unconsciously, you're very close to death, right? And so you kind of, I don't know, I'm still wondering about this, but there was a kind of almost carelessness in my life at some point, where I would put myself in dangerous condition unconsciously. So, but I was never scared, but I went through zones where in hindsight, I should have been a little bit more careful.
Yeah, because it's kind of almost like a lays off. It's almost like whatever happens, happens, and death is part of life. And I've seen a lot of that, and up to and including the time that when your brother passed away, and you tell the story that um, your dad wanted you to give your brother a kiss after he'd passed away, and that only added to your trauma.
Yeah, I forgot the mind of a child is very, on one hand, resilient. It will bury what it cannot deal with, and so I forgot a lot of it. And then, um, I grew up in a family that didn't accept therapy, that buried everything. So for 30 years, I just buried everything, and I forgot a lot of it. And and then in my 30s, I eventually started therapy to look into all of this, and then an accident happened in the family, so that re-triggered a lot of things. And I tried to hold on, and then in October 2012, I burned out. I was launching a business, and I didn't really burn out in the sense that you burn out, you're physically exhausted. I was emotionally exhausted. It was like 40 years of pain suddenly emerged, and I found myself crying. And then the first night, I remember I dreamed about my brother. I didn't remember ever dreaming about my brother. And it was a scene where I was standing, I could see the farm where we grew up and where I grew up. And, there was the wake at the time. And it was still at home most of the time. And so my brother, who was in his 20s, was laying there on his deathbed. And I remember my father, who was extremely tall, next to me, and he said, "Kiss him goodbye." And I was the norm at the time, but for a 7-year-old, to kiss goodbye to someone, it's most probably the scariest thing I've experienced in my life. And I believe children are extremely intuitive and they can feel a lot of things. So touching a dead corpse, is extremely scary. Yeah. So,
And that kind of was like you had, what I tend to call a bad country music song period for a great deal of your life, with a lot of people that left suddenly. And you got to a point where you were done, you were lost, you couldn't recover. And then what happened? Because you did recover.
yeah. Um, so the burnout happened in October 2012. I went through a few dark months, writing a lot, and then it got better. And it was a cycle for the next few years. I suffered from PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. I didn't know about it. I still thought PTSD is only for veterans who are deployed in Iraq. And I went to Africa, then I went to Dubai, started taking on CEO roles of startups, starting feeling better. And then I got back to the US, and I was in New York, and that was 2019. And then the flashback came back, and during the day, and I could see scenes of my father married a woman who was abusive when I was 7, and her son as well. And then suddenly I started, you're with your friends and you're having a good time, and that it's a safe apartment and everything is safe. And then you see these flashbacks from the past that come in front of your eyes, and there is no way there is nowhere to run away anymore, because they are all in your head. And chemicals and antidepressant and all of this had never really been an option for me, and they were still not, and it's never been. And so that's when I remember it was a Monday afternoon, and I touched a low point. I mean, the thoughts came, and this is something I put in writing and I've never shared in public, but I found myself in a fetal position on my bed, and I was living in New York, and it's the first time I had real suicidal thoughts, because I was like, I can't do it anymore. I mean, it's never going to go away. And I remember spending a few hours there, and the sun set. It was January. It was really cold. And at some point, I saw myself, and I was like, "You have to do something. You have to call for help." And I called someone who put me in touch with a therapist, and I restarted therapy again, and which didn't always help because it was more triggering than anything else. And then, flash forward about a year forward, I came across an article in the New York Times about a therapy called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which has been proven to help treat PTSD. And so I had come across it years earlier, but I nobody explained to me exactly what it was, so I didn't really trust it. And I found a therapist, the second one. The first one was way too expensive, didn't even want to get on a call. And I had I had lost hope. I really wanted to heal, but I had lost hope. So I remember the therapist was really kind, and I told her, I said, the science says it worked, but I don't trust you. I don't trust the therapy. I said, with all my due respect, prove me wrong.
That'll get her attention.
I know. I said it kindly, but I said, I don't trust you. I've tried so many things that at this point, I'm like, why would this work? But I want to heal and I want to leave. And and the therapy worked. The therapist was extremely kind and extremely patient. And eventually it took 14 sessions that were really hard, but um, this was really a turning point. And it was an accumulation, I think, of all the work I had done before with psychedelics, with other things. But EMDR was really a breakthrough for me.
Now say that again slowly so that people can Google it if nothing else, so that they can get an idea of what it is again.
Exactly. So it's called EMDR, and it stands for EI, movement, D, desensitization, R, reprocessing.
Now at the top of the show, I said that there are some things that we're going to talk about today that you can actually do in the privacy of your own home. Is this one of those?
So EMDR, the therapy EMDR, says you have to work with a therapist. And so you need to find, an EMDR trained therapist. However, the active mechanism of EMDR is this eye movement. So to put it very simply, during an EMDR session, a therapist will be moving their fingers in front of your eyes so that your eyes move laterally from left to right. And then 5 years ago, Professor Huberman at Stanford, who is a very prominent neuroscientist who didn't believe in EMDR at the beginning, his team runs studies and shows that when your eyes move laterally, left to right, it decreases the activation of what is called the amygdala, which is the fear center at the center of the brain. So when we get scared, when we suffer from PTSD, very often the amygdala goes in hyperdrive. So something triggers us, and then suddenly we get panicked. It's like, and you can tell people to relax, and it's like, it won't work. It's like the amygdala is in hyperdrive. So what we did as Akessa is integrated this lateral eye movement in an app, plus a guided, a voice that guides people through thinking about the traumatic experience, plus what is called binaural beat music, which is music at a different frequency. And so we've integrated everything into an app so that people can follow the process on their own, confidentially at home, without needing a therapist.
And this is an app that you have created. Is that right?
Yes,
Because
yes.
I'm sorry, I thought you said nap to begin with, and I take naps all the time because they're therapeutic for me as well. But it's actually an app, and
Correct.
also I wanted to mention that when you were moving your finger back and forth, you were going. The only time that I've ever had that happen was when a policeman was giving me a DUI check, to make sure I hadn't been drinking, and so because it works the same way when your eyes go back and forth or they don't, they give a signal that is that am I going down the right path there?
It is similar, I think. So the what is really interesting about the eyes actually, and I had never noticed this until I listened to Professor Huberman, is the eyes are actually part of the brain, but outside of the skull. And we never pay attention to this. So when you
Oh,
when you work on the eyes, you're actually working on the brain.
oh, that's interesting. I now
Yeah.
that I've never heard that. Um, so the eyes are part of the whole mechanism of seeing things, and your brain interprets what your eyes are seeing, and that's how you can have PTSD or whatever it is. By the way, I wanted to make sure that everybody understands that PTSD is far more common than a lot of
Mhm.
people might want to believe, because it has it yes, there are people that come back from the wars and from Vietnam or from Iraq or Afghanistan, and they have seen some horrific things, and they have PTSD, but there are also people that have suffered trauma, here, sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, and they can have PTSD as well. And so just because you weren't in the military, don't rule that out as a problem for you. Am I correct in that?
It is correct, and I think it's important to share a few stats. You know, I'm a scientist by training, right? So, um, on average, about 80 to 90% of the population will suffer some form of trauma in their lifetime. And I'm not being pessimistic. This is just a norm. And it could be, abuse, right? And a lot of women suffer from abuse. A car accident can be a trauma, the loss of a loved one, um, repeated job loss, chronic illness, the fear of returning of chronic illness, So natural disaster, all the fires and the hurricanes and all of this. So about 80 to 90%, and I guess in a war-torn country, it's about 100%. Out of those, out of the population, about 7 to 8% of the population suffers from PTSD right now in the US, in developed countries. And once again, it's most probably much higher in countries that experience war.
I would think so, but there is. I guess it's part of the human condition that we all get an opportunity to experience stress and trauma at one point or another, either self-induced or somebody else does it to us. And it can be a sign of growth if you unless you bury it, and then it can come back. I've known people that will bury some things and then they can actually come back as a physical problem later on in life if they've got and if they go see a hypnotherapist or somebody who can dig deep and get deeply, they can then maybe cure that problem that has been manifesting, and becomes physical from your brain, from your energy, from wherever that is that. Am I going down the right path? I'm not a doctor, by the way. I don't even pretend to be
Yeah.
one on TV.
So I can give you two explanation. I mean two answers, and they correlate. So I was talking very recently to a retired police officer in Colorado, pretty high ranking, and so he's seen a share of trauma and being shot out and everything. And 10 years ago, so 20 years in his careers, suddenly everything boiled up, and he was diagnosed with complex PTSD. And right now he's seeing a therapist, and he was telling me, I have this pain in the chest. I'm very healthy. I know it's completely internalized. And I told him, same thing happened to me. When I started therapy, I was running long distance. I had just finished marathons. I was very healthy. I started having this chest pain. And I told the therapist, and I said, most probably emotional. I'm almost sure. I mean, it's like, I'm in very good health. And she was very worried. And in order to reassure her, I went to for medical checkup and everything. I had absolutely nothing. And then 6 months later, it disappeared. And if you look at Chinese medicine, because I spent time in Asia and I got very interested in this, Chinese doctor thinks that we internalize different emotion in different part of the body, actually. So
Yes.
we internalize a lot of the grief in the chest. We internalize a lot of anxiety and abuse in the whole digestive system. And so it's not, it makes sense. And when I see at my father, who never grieved my mother, who had 4 heart attacks, even though he was originally very healthy, you can see, right? I mean, he suffered from grief, he internalized it, and then eventually his heart gave up. And so, yes, we internalize emotion. Emotions are energy, and they have to go somewhere. I mean, if we trap them inside, they have to get stored somewhere.
In your work, I'm just curious because in my life, I've been around people and I've had family that they tend to bury things. They don't we don't they get into an argument, as an example, and rather than talk it through and come to a resolution, they go to bed and they forget about it, and then in the morning they don't ever talk about it again, and that's not healthy. How do you help people in your work and in your daily life? How do you help people understand that that's not healthy, and then learn how to communicate those things with each other?
So I've learned the hard way with my father is that you can't change people, right? They have to come to the realization on their own. Um, I think sharing stories help because people at some point relate and they can see, huh, this person did this, and eventually it boiled up, so it might boil up. So I think sharing stories and destigmatizing mental health over and over and over again helps. I think creating a very safe space is important. Usually people don't share because they are afraid, right? They're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of, I think deep within, we have a huge fear of being isolated. We're a social animal. And so we have a huge fear of hurting others, being rejected. And and I believe that accepting people and as they are goes a very long way, and pouring love on them, if they talk or if they don't talk and they know they are accepted, and eventually they start opening up. um I've seen as well with people, especially in substance abuse. um they bury, they medicate, they self-medicate, they drink to avoid the pain, and at some point they hit bottom, and it's very often when a relationship gets damaged. I was reading again recently, someone was like, when the day my children refused to talk to me was the day I woke up. And after rehab many times that never worked, the day when my children gave me an ultimatum, I stopped drinking. So, but you have, unfortunately, they often have to touch bottom, to realize the pain and that it can't go. But very often people overdose, or they die of diseases before it happened. But I in a nutshell, being there for people and being extremely kind, loving, and accepting goes a very long way.
That is so rare.
And trust me, I wasn't always like this, right?
Because I would like to believe that we are all interested in each other's welfare, but in many cases, there's a little bit of judgment that goes along with that, and a little bit of why did you do that? Because and it makes it difficult for people to connect and to feel love, and that's the thing is that I think all of us would love to be able to go to a home where everybody's smiling, the dog's wagging his tail, which they do anyway, and everybody is together and having a happy experience. It doesn't happen very often, but it sure would be nice if it happened more. By the way, I'm going to have you pronounce your last name because I'm going to forget it. And Marie,
Lesaicherre.
perfect. And your company is Akasha Health, is that right?
Akesa Health,
See, I knew I'd screw
Akesa.
that up.
Yeah.
Yes. And when we come back, we're going to talk about that, how she and her team can help you. And she can work all over the world. And it's great with the way Zoom is these days, and the communications we can have, that we can actually help each other from anywhere in the world. So, and she is today. Where are you today? By the way, Miss World Traveler.
I'm also in a place where it's about 19 degrees. I'm in Florida right now.
And it's 19 degrees
19
Fahrenheit?
degrees as well.
Oh,
90
90,
degrees
yeah.
as well.
It's 90 here too. And the only thing that we don't have here are alligators, snakes, and spiders like you do down there. So but anyway, we're talking with Marie. She's going to talk about her health program and how you can also understand if you've been feeling badly, if you've had things going on in your life that don't bury them anymore. The time for them to come out is now, so that you can then turn around and live your life to be the best that you can be. And we're going to help you with that in the second half hour. So I hope you'll stay right there. You're listening to Positive Talk Radio on KKNW 1150 AM. Hey, PTR loyal listener. First, thanks for being in my dream. And second, I have a new concept in business to share with you. It's called socialpreneurship. So What's that? Well, it's the idea that any company designates all profits beyond expenses to be awarded to a local or international charity or project which is working to achieve good in the world. KM Media is such a company. We believe that it's important for us to give back whenever possible and to make great things happen. So I hope you'll join us in creating this new business model that will positively impact all of us. In the next few weeks, we will lay out the plan and begin our fundraising efforts. So stay tuned for more details right here on Positive Talk Radio.
When you want to say more than words communicate, you can with flowers. Your custom boutique floral studio in Bothell, Washington is anaturaldesign.com, connecting you to nature through the language of flowers. Where your people are is where our flowers are beautiful. Your success is our goal. anaturaldesign.com at your fingertips today.
Hey, thanks for listening to Positive Talk Radio. Did you know that we're also a media production company? Well, surprise, we are. We can create all kinds of audio, video products to fill any need. Please visit kmmedia.pro/our-store for a complete list of products and services. In addition, do you need a great voice to add to your own website or any other project? I know that we can add depth and quality to your work. I've been told more times than I can count by many professionals in the business that my voice adds to the quality of the presentation. So, let me create something for you. Please contact me at kevin@kmmedia.pro and let's create something great. And welcome back, everybody, to Positive Talk Radio. My name is Kevin McDonald. I'm your host today. And by the way, Positive Talk, which you may remember through the mist of time, was on this same channel in 2003. And we now do Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays on KKNW, and then Fridays again on Kixie in the afternoon. So we are on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Is how I like to say it. And we're also on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and KKNW's Facebook and Twitter. We're all over the place. So if you don't hear us here and don't catch the live radio show, that doesn't mean that that's gone, because this then turns into a podcast and goes into the 50 podcast sites. So we're all over the place. So you don't have to miss a show. You can be with us and you can talk to, and you can get some help that you may need. And I wanted to bring this up because we have a young lady that is working to help everybody on the planet have better mental health. That, I think, is her stated goal, and that's what she'd like to do. So if you are sitting in your car and you're saying, well, let me give you an example. I have another relative. I have such relatives that I get to use so many stories for. He's in a particular industry, has been for 20 years, has been highly regarded in that industry, but now at one point his back started to hurt. He was in front of a computer 8 hours a day. His back started to hurt. He can't stand for an appreciable period of time. He can't sit. He's stressed out because of his job. He doesn't like to do it anymore. I think that that all of that is connected into one big package, and I'm going to try and get him to get help from someone like Marie, who can help him understand that it doesn't have to be this way, and that he can change his life in a positive way. And so, Marie, if he were to come to you or she, I gotta hide the identity, but if they were to come to you today and say what I just described as being their issue, how would you begin the process of helping them?
By asking a couple of questions and by listening. I think when you ask questions and you create a safe space, people talk. Actually, I believe they have a desire to unpack. So that's how I would start. And by asking questions and by letting people open it up, I believe the therapist never has the answer. People have the answer within. It's just about helping them unpack it and find, help them find it. So that's how I would start. Yeah.
And then how do you deal with how do you help people who don't even they are such in the grips of either depression or deep-seated anxiety or whatever it is? How do you help them even understand that that's what's going on with them? Because in his case, he doesn't know that he's got this issue. It's just keeps rearing its ugly head, and but he doesn't want to. Maybe it's the want to. He doesn't want to delve into it and understand it because it's difficult. And it's hard work. And you've done that because you've done the hard work. But how do you convince him that doing the hard work will have a positive outcome and it'll be okay? I don't know that
So
you can. Yeah, and you said it
yeah,
earlier.
I don't know that you can, but I want, so I'm trained as a coach, and I'm trained in energy coaching. And when we learn the model, there are 7 energy level, which are actually the 7 chakra level in the Ayurvedic Indian system. So it's the same. The first bottom level is the level of apathy. It's people who are usually very depressed and feel victimized and victim and don't want to do anything about it. The second level is the level of anger. The third level is becoming responsible. The fourth level is love, and then you go up the scale. Um, when someone is at the level 1 victim, it's extremely difficult to bring this person to the second level. And very often, and I've been there for many years, um, and I can explain why later on. But I thought it was, someone was going to come rescue me, and but at the end of the day, you have to do the work. And so those people at some point have to move to the anger stage. And anger is a very healthy emotion. It means they say, that's it, I'm going to do something about it. It's difficult for people you live with because they see you angry and it has to be managed, but it's very healthy. And we live in a society where I think we tone down anger a lot.
Too.
And then we go through anger and we go to the third level of being responsible, resourceful, and we say, okay, do something about this now. And you know, when we see people who are victim, and we want to help them, right? And a friend of mine is living, for example, with someone who suffers from depression, and she's like, I try to, help him, and I try to cheer him up, and I'm like, just leave him alone. Just leave him alone for a couple of days, and at some point he's going to get out. He's going to do something because he's going to get bored. Why are you just reinforcing it? And I know I may sound a little bit harsh with what I say. When people are suicidal, it's a very different story. But you hear, when you've been a victim before, you hear the sign. It's like, it's their fault. It's always their fault. It's always the fault of someone else, right?
Yep, yep,
And so
yep.
you see their pattern, and you're like, okay, if this is what you think, this is what you think. And now I take a step back and I let people ruminate with their stuff, until they are like, oh, I'm going to do something. Can you help me? And I'm like, okay, good. Let's have a talk now.
Well, and that really is the step one, is to reach out to somebody. If somebody wants to reach out to you, how do they get that done?
Multiple way. They can Google me. Good thing is, with this weird French name, they can find me very easily. Um,
Might have to spell that.
LinkedIn, social media, email. I think the best way to reach me right now is email, Marie, Marie, at the name of the company, akesahealth.com.
Go
That's
ahead
the
and
best
spell
way
that for
to
us.
reach me. Akesa health, like health.com.
And what does that mean?
So Akesa is inspired. I'm a very big fan of Greek mythology, and so when I founded the business, I was like, I want something a little bit mythical. And Hermes is the god of healing, right? But I didn't want the lawsuit with the Hermes bags, so I avoided that. And Akeso is also a Greek goddess of healing and the goddess of self-healing, actually. And so I didn't like the O at the end, and so I changed it to Akesa, and it became Akesa Health.
Oh, very good. Now, where do you see your company and your health program going over the next 3 or 4 years?
I want Akessa to be global. The app is designed so that there is very little language inside. It's a lot of sound, it's a lot of images. So it's really easy to translate in other languages. So I want to translate it in Spanish for the US and then South America and then Spain and then other languages, most probably Hindi for India because there is a huge need. Um, and then I want to improve on the app as well. So right now, the app uses a lot this eye movement with this ball that moves across the screen and music. But I realized that we all have different coping mechanism. You can see some people are very visual, some people are very auditory, some people like movements as well. And so I want the app to integrate some movements as well for people who are not so visual but prefer to move as well in order to release the stress. And so I want the app to be tailored to people's strength and preferences. And so there's a lot more development that I want to do in the app. Yeah.
Now, is the app available now, or is it still in development?
It is available for iPhones and iPads, and Android is going to come soon.
Well, hurry up with the droid, would you please?
Help me find some. Can I share? I'm looking for someone who is kind of interested and would help me with the Android development, you know? So if there's someone out there who is interested in this,
Well,
please reach out.
if you are a godlike person with the Android device and know how to help put an app together, give Marie a call or her email, which is again Marie at.
Akesa, Akesa health.com.
Oh, very good. Now the app's been out a little while. Do you have some folks that have used it, and do you have any reviews of what happened to them when they used it?
Yes, so we have about close to 500 people who have used the app. Um, the 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 main, we have a lot of good testimonial. The first reaction from people is like, "Oh my God, it works." Even a friend of mine who is a fellow London Business School psychiatrist in London, trained in EMDR, I've shared about the technology right from the beginning, and he knows the science. And then he lost his partner, and so he was grieving, and he used the app, and he's like, "Oh my God, it works!" And I'm like, "Of course it works. I mean, you know the science inside." Because it looks so simple. It's been designed to be extremely simple to use. And because when people are stressed, they get onto the app. They don't want to figure out what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to click? So it says start. That's it. And then you have all the sessions. And so this is the main feedback we've had across the range. People are like, "Oh my God, it works." And so it helps people on two levels. One is within a couple of minutes, it helps people reduce their stress, so this is one. But it also help people over multiple session rewire their brain and work on triggers so that triggers are not so triggering anymore. And so we have the feedback of a CEO who's extremely stressed because she's running a business, fundraising, lack sleep, and suffer from abuse earlier. And she used it, and she can see that events that were triggering her and worrying her don't worry her as much anymore. And the ultimate goal of the app is for people to change what we call their thoughts and belief systems. So if you go through a layoff, and I've been through multiple layoffs, the first reaction is often, "I'm a loser, right? It's my fault. I should have done better. I should have worked
Right.
harder. I should. And then at the end, and we think, maybe it was time to go, as is very often the case. Or I did the best I could, there was a recession, it has absolutely nothing to do with me. And so instead of having what we call negative or disempowering thoughts, we have more empowering and uplifting thoughts that help us move forward. And so the feedback is it's really efficient. People love the confidential aspect as well. Where, when we were still developing the prototype, I remember a woman was like, "Well, I use it at work. It's like everybody thinks I'm watching something on YouTube and they don't know what I'm doing actually." So people
Well,
love that as well.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's really helpful. If you can have an app like that that can lower your stress And because if you need to, you're at work, you have a stressful meeting, you get out of the meeting, you can stop by the ladies' room, hang out there for a couple of minutes, use the app, and then you're going to be a lot calmer for the rest of the day. I wanted to ask you because it seems to me, maybe it's just me, but this concept that it's possible for us to rewire our brains and to get us to think differently than we used to think. Has that been a long-standing thing, or is that kind of newer technology?
So this idea of brain plasticity and even the fact that we still, neurons are still created in adulthood is recently new, right? A few decades ago, people thought, you're born with a brain and then it stopped decaying and that's it.
See,
And
that's
now,
what I
we
always thought. Go
exactly,
ahead.
but now people know that we keep creating brain cells, and the brain. I find the brain extremely fascinating. So this is more on the physical side, but they realize that so a huge part of the brain is linked to the vision, right? More than the auditory part. And so people who have some kind of brain damage, another part of the brain associated with something else will take over and cover the vision part, for example. Who would have
Wow.
guessed?
Our brains are pretty smart.
They are very smart. And one inspiration for the app was um, dreams and what is called REM sleep. So to go back to EMDR, this with this lateral movement of the eyes, so the eyes move left, right. It's exactly what happened when we dream. So during sleep, there is deep sleep when we don't move. And then there is what is called REM sleep, REM, rapid eye movement, when we are half awake, half asleep, and the eyes move left, right, left, right. So for a very long time, people thought, EMDR is the same thing as REM sleep, and it's actually a bit different. But when I started researching EMDR and geeking out on all of this, I started reading about REM sleep and sleep, and for a very long time, people thought dreams are useless. And I believe, I'm trained as a biologist. I don't think anything is useless in the body. The body is way too efficient. If it was useless, we would have stopped doing it, hundreds of years ago. Um, and so during sleep, we think again about the experiences of the day. For example, an argument, and we let go in a very simplified fashion. We let go of the emotional pain, and we integrate the learning from it. So if today, I was very busy at work and a friend of mine called and I snapped a little bit and I said, I'm busy right now, in a tone that was a little bit tense. During the night and my dream, I would say, when you're busy at work and you're in the midst of something, don't pick up the phone for your friend. Just text and say, I'll call you back in half an hour, right? And you wake up the day after, you're refreshed, you've let go of the emotional pain, the guilt, the shame, the regrets, and you've learned. And so next time your friend calls when you're in the middle of a meeting, just don't reply and you call later. And so yes, we continuously learn, we continuously, we can rewire the brain. Yeah.
Hey, you've studied sleep and REM sleep and dreaming specifically?
I read a lot about it. And if people are interested, there is a very good book called Why We Sleep by Walker, who is a scientist at UC Berkeley. It's a fascinating book about sleep. Yeah.
Would you
Mm.
explain to me then why I like I've mentioned many times on this program, I drove a bus for 12 years. And when you drive a bus, you have a route that you go on. I'll dream and I'll get lost on my route. And I won't be able to figure out how to get back on my route. And I'll go in circles, or I'll get locked in. And something weird will happen. Why does it? I don't even want to drive a bus anymore. Why does it still happen to me?
So it's interesting because recently I've been dreaming about past events that happened a decade ago, and I was like, why am I still processing old stuff? And I think there's still old stuff that the brain is still trying to process. But I'm not the dream expert, but from what I've learned from dreams is that there are two parts. One is they are the events, and we can take an event from the day, or we can take a movie or something. And then there is the meaning as well. And so the meaning might not be related to the event, if you see what I mean. So you might be using the bus driving because it's something that is familiar, but then the meaning might be something else that is intertwined.
Well, one of these days, I'm going to have to get a dream expert on here to find out why we go to school in our underwear and stuff like that. What's going on
But
with that?
about dreams, and so when the flashback came, my dreams came back, and I was very happy about this because I got a lot of insight. So in the middle of the night, I remember I had my iPad next to my bed, and I would wake up drowsily, and I would write my dreams. And suddenly I started training my brain about this. And so in the middle of the night, I would wake up and I would write them. And the more you write them, the more insight comes as well. And writing the first half hour just when we wake up and the brain is still in between asleep and awake is usually a good time to write them, because we go on a tangent and we write stuff and suddenly the insight comes. But the other thing, just to finish on dreams, because I love this, is I write my dreams, and sometimes I still don't understand dreams. But 6 months later, I reread them, and I'm like, oh my God, the meaning is just so obvious now.
Well,
Because
and
you need
and
to
the
take the distance. Yeah.
and the interesting things about dreams and what's associated with them, which can be vision like, or in something that can be considered a intuitive hit or an intuitive download. Those happens in those moments when you are kind of between sleep and awake, and then you can get those. That's where you're familiar with Paul McCartney. He
Yes.
he
Yeah.
he wrote Yesterday because that was a dream that came to him in and this whole song came to him, and it was during the REM sleep, and it was a download, because and that song has been copied 3,000 times. It's been played millions. It's one of the most famous songs in the world, and he swears to this day he has no earthly idea how it happened. It just showed up in his brain, and that's because of. Do you think that if you believe in such things, like there's another side, and there are angels, and there are folks that are there looking out after our best interest, that's the best time for them to communicate with us?
Yes. And you're talking to a scientist, right? I'm
I
a PhD in
I was a little
science.
frightened
I'm
about
like,
asking that question because you're a scientist.
and so my motto, and a lot of it changed when I was in Africa. My motto as a child, and I was raised Catholic, I mean, was what I cannot touch doesn't exist. It was that bad. And I spent 7 years in a Catholic boarding school. The nuns were kind. I went to mass once a week because I had to. And I said, it's great to believe. It looks like it makes you happy. I don't. I would agree to going to math out of respect. But that's it. And
Um,
then and so my motto was what I cannot touch doesn't exist. And then I went to Africa and I started seeing a lot of strange things. And I met shamans and I had visions, and so um I came across people whom I think were reincarnations of people I've lost. And so my motto changed, and I said, if I cannot prove it wrong, it might be right. And when I was in Dubai and I meditated a lot, telepathies came, and I could see what was going to happen in the future. And it happened. So at some point, I said, well, Mary, this is just the way it is. And, you know, energy healers and spiritual leaders say during the night, we reconnect with the soul. And so
yes.
because the body is asleep and the soul comes down, and so I think the night and sleep are extremely powerful. And yeah, I believe this is why sometimes we have mythological dreams and intuitions. And, yeah.
By the way, we've been talking with, and say your last name again, Marie
Lesaicherre.
Lesaicherre. It's such a lovely name that I can't pronounce. But in any event, I want to thank you for coming here. We are sadly going to run out of time. Will you come back and talk to me again? We had so much trouble getting this one done. We need to do this again if you'd be so kind.
Anytime. I love this.
It's been great fun talking to you. You got about 30 seconds, and I would love for you to tell our audience anything that you would like them to know in the next 30 seconds. No pressure, mind you.
there is light at the end of the tunnel, and you know, hard times are times of growth, and there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah.
That's a
And the
great.
other one is because we've talked a lot about sleep. I think sleep is extremely beneficial for mental health. Extremely beneficial.
So are my naps. So thank you for that. I appreciate that you greatly. Go to her website, which is akashahealth.com. That's AKESAHEATLTH.com. And I want to thank you for being here. And I want to remind everybody, we'll be back on Friday, but I want to remind everybody, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. We'll see you Friday at noon.